Okay, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mangg. Welcome back to Hanging with Mangg. And I know, more Final Fantasy XIV. But, look, the game that I'm playing on Hanging with Mangg isn't supposed to matter. It's just something for me to do while I talk. You're not supposed to really be watching. You're just supposed to... Well, okay, I can't tell you what you're supposed to do. That's not right. But, you know, it's really more of just a podcast. A weekly update podcast. I don't know. I don't know what Hanging with Mangg is. I just do what I want. Anyways, so yeah, what I want to do, of course, is just play Final Fantasy XIV because, well, I'd say I'm obsessed. I think that's probably the correct term. And so we're just doing something here called Palace of the Dead, which is a pretty interesting mode. It's basically like a randomized dungeon with like 200 floors. And when you go in at the start, you start at like level 1. And you level up like independently of your normal job inside of the place. But then whenever you complete 10 floors, you get experience for your actual character outside of the dungeon. So and you don't need, like, we actually happen to have one tank, one healer, 2 DPS, but you can go in here with like 4 DPS. So it's often like a recommended way to level up DPS classes without bothering with normal dungeons, because you can easily just jump in here. You can even do it solo, which people have. But it's interesting because it kind of reminds me of the ancient dungeon or whatever from Lufia 2, which was a completely randomized dungeon that you would go into with no equipment, and you would have to find all your you would have to find items and equipment throughout the dungeon as you transcend or descend, I don't remember which, through each of the floors. And it was a really cool concept in Lufia 2. It was always like one of the highlights of playing that game, because it was just interesting, being stripped of like everything you have and just scrounging your way from the bottom to the top. It kind of reminds me of Breath of the Wild, that island you go to, where you get stripped of all your equipment and stuff, and you just have to make do with what you find. That on just a much lengthier, grander scale. So I'm not like in love with Palace of the Dead or anything. It's not quite as interesting of an experience as the Ancient Dungeon was. But I just started a level 1 gladiator here, and I figured I would just do this a few times so I can start doing proper dungeons. Really just... I mean, I always used to say that WoW was just the best MMO because, I don't know, it's what I had played for so long, and it was like the most popular, and it was like, okay, yeah, it's the best MMO, right? There's nothing better. But man, oh man, I'm just loving this game. The LP is going strong. I think we're around 80 parts I've recorded of that LP, which is a fuck ton. Especially since the average length of those parts is around like an hour and 10 minutes. So, yeah, it's a lot. There's just honestly an obscene amount of text in this game. Like, an obscene amount. Most of it is not voiced in any way, so This is like the biggest voice acting Let's Play I've ever done. And I've done a bunch. But honestly, like, most of the main story in this game is literally just go here, then go here, then go here, and talk to all these people in between, you know? But all right. So this week on this channel, like I said, we have Final Fantasy 14. That's not going anywhere for quite a while. Even if we do, I mean, I'm putting out 6 of those videos a week. So 6 videos a week, 10 weeks. That'll get 60 videos out. I wouldn't be surprised if the total LP length is about maybe 120 parts, give or take. So that's 20 weeks straight of Final Fantasy 14, which is a good few months, good number of months of daily videos, more or less. I'm still having a blast, and I'm really enjoying the experience because I'm loving the game. And so I'm going to just continue everything that I have recorded. I'm going to keep releasing as long as people are watching. And I know we're only uploaded like part 19 or something. So it's hard to tell, you know, if people are really going to watch part 76. But if I have it recorded, it's going to get released. So chances are the whole thing's going to get recorded and released all the way up through Shadowbringers. And then, you know, at some point they're going to release another expansion. I'll probably record all that. So, yeah. Yeah, what an endeavor. We also have Mortal Shell, which is going along pretty smoothly. I was a little concerned early on because I was sort of struggling, and it was a little rough, but it's smooth sailing now. I feel we're killing bosses, having a good time. And we have Marvel's Avengers, which I don't really predict having any sort of difficulty issues or getting stuck or anything like that. And from what I understand, it's maybe like a 12-hour campaign. So it's not going to be a super long LP. But hopefully we have some enjoyable moments in there. Some Hulk smashing and all that. We also had two brothers play Chrono Trigger. And I think for both of us, this was like our most enjoyable Two Brothers Play video so far to record. I don't know if it's the most enjoyable one to watch. I don't know. I really would be interested in some feedback on that. We're going to keep going with it regardless because we just really enjoyed it. But, you know, it's a 2-hour video of an old RPG. It's a little bit more interesting because it's 2 games going on simultaneously, which I don't think you see too often outside of speedruns. So there's always something for us to talk about, which is nice. Because if I'm like just doing random battles, or I died or something and I have to redo stuff, so you know he's ahead or vice versa. So really enjoyable experience though, because like I said, we both love old school RPGs. Chrono Trigger is one we're both decently familiar with, and it's just an enjoyable experience for us. Oh, I'm pacified. So we're definitely going to keep going with that. I'm expecting it to take 5 parts. If we can get by in 4, I'd be pretty damn impressed. But I would expect 5. Like from 1.5 hours to 2. But the format is really exciting, and we're talking about doing all sorts of like SNES games like this, Final Fantasy V, Final Fantasy VI, Breath of Fire, Lufia 2, just a whole bunch of games that we could just sit down together and play through. Kind of like just basically like we were kids, like in the old days, if we had 2 Super Nintendos, which we didn't. So it was more him playing and me watching, but this is better. So good stuff. Yeah, so that's pretty much the state of the situation for Mangg's LPs. God damn it. Over on the Exploring series, I released a video about SCP-001, a good boy, about an AI being put in charge of developing containment protocols for the Foundation. I think people like that one quite a bit. I also released a video for D&D about the Tarrasque. Not an especially long video. I'm sure some other content creators would squeeze half an hour out of the Tarrasque, but I just like to get those facts out there. It reminds me of doing Cthulhu Mythos back in the day when I would just put out 7-minute videos. Or like 5-minute videos. And it's doing pretty well. It's doing pretty well for a D&D video. Those aren't my most popular stuff. So I assume that the Tarrasque would be fairly popular. Yeah, and then this week I worked on... I'm not gonna remember the number. SCP-3890. Forget Me Not. Which is similar to SCP-3001. And that involves just a person stuck in like an extra dimensional location and they lose their mind. But it's got some differences. It had a good aesthetic for the artwork, I think, and overall I thought it was decent. Oh, are we leaving? Are we done? We're done. Okay. Not a long video. It's like 17 minutes or something, but that's what it is. Then next week I'm working on another video that's been sitting on the polls on Patreon for a year. 1 year I added it to the polls and it never won. Because it's about spiders. That's why. That's really the only reason. And I don't like spiders either, but hey, can't discriminate. So that's pretty much where that's all at. Nothing too crazy going on in my world. I mean, there's a lot of exciting things that I'm doing on this channel that I'm really, happy with. Final Fantasy 14 and this Chrono Trigger thing. Mortal Shell's a good game. I get to play as the Hulk in Avengers. I mean, it's all good. So we didn't do a variety stream on last Wednesday. Partly because I was just still obsessed with Final Fantasy 14, and partly because I had, like, a new LP, like, basically 2 new LPs going on simultaneously, and that's still the case. But I'm not going to skip 2 weeks. So I'm going to do another variety stream this Wednesday, but it might not interest everyone. What I'm going to do is Final Fantasy V. And I'm going to do the 4-job fiesta thing. Technically, that's a charity event that happens in July, I think, June or July. But it's a challenge run of Final Fantasy IV in which you get handed random jobs. And you are limited to only those jobs for that run of Final Fantasy V. So you can do the challenge run anytime. And for Two Brothers Play, at some point in the near future, I'd really like to do Final Fantasy V. Because my brother's never played it, and I think it's one of the best Final Fantasies. So to make it somewhat even, I'd like to do him playing the game normally and me doing, like, a challenge run like that. And since I've never really done that, I'd like to just give it a try on my own and see how it goes. So that's what we're going to attempt on Wednesday, is just see how we go with 4-job fiesta. Again, I know that won't interest many people, but it interests me. That's what I'm all about. Aside from that, still no RPG stuff. This last Monday, basically just a bunch of us played Final Fantasy 14 together. What more do you need? I'd rather play this than something on Tabletop Simulator. I mean, playing an RPG would still win out, but that's just doesn't seem to be on the table. Pun intended. Yeah, gosh. Really not a whole lot to talk about. For a lot of people, they're trying to just get life back to normal. I see even people on Facebook post like, "Oh well, now that COVID is behind us, blah blah blah." It's like, well, is it? Is it though? I mean, Wisconsin had like a 12 point something % positive rate for testing the other day, which isn't too promising. Schools are opening up. Cold weather is going to start sweeping in. Is this my first time playing through Final Fantasy XIV? Yes. Yes, it is. Well, no, I guess technically not. When it first came out, I leveled a Dragoon to 50. But I don't really remember the experience whatsoever. And as soon as I hit 50, I stopped. So, yeah, this is pretty much my first time playing through Final Fantasy. I probably should have stunned that. But I'm having a blast with it. So, it definitely meets my approval. And I definitely did not stop at 50 this time. Nice. Yeah, so nothing really exciting going on, I guess. Just life as we know it. I won't drag out this stream. So check out the SCP-3890 video tomorrow. We've got more Mortal Shell, more Avengers, more Chrono Trigger, more Final Fantasy, variety stream on Wednesday. I mean, I'm packing this channel full of content, whether you like it or not. But, alright. That's good enough. My name is Mangg. This has been Hanging with Mangg. I'll see you fine folks next week.